Chapter 19 of The Children of the New Forest. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Kalinda. The Children of the New Forest by Frederick Marryat. Chapter 19. We will put them into the yard for the present. I mean that Holdfast shall take charge of them by and by. I will soon teach him. Yes, he take charge of coat, or anything I tell him. Why not he take charge of goats? Clever dog, Holdfast. Massa Humphrey, you think Massa Edward take away both his dogs, Smoker and Watch? I say better not take puppy. Take Smoker and leave puppy. I agree with you, Pablo. We ought to have 2 dogs here. I will speak to my brother. Now run forward and open the gate of the yard, and throw them some hay, Pablo, while I go and call on my sisters. The flock of goats were much admired, and the next morning were driven out of the forest to feed, attended by Pablo and Holdfast. When it was dinner time, Pablo drove the flock near to the cottage, telling the dog to mind them. The sensible animal remained at once with the goats, until Pablo's return from dinner. And it may be as well to observe here, that in a few days the dog took charge of them altogether, driving them home to the yard every evening, and as soon as the goats were put into the yard, the dog had his supper, and the dog took care, therefore, not to be too late. To return to our narrative. On Saturday, Humphrey and Pablo went to Lymington to bring home Edward's clothes, and Humphrey made Pablo acquainted with all that he wanted to know, in case it might be necessary to send Pablo there alone. Edward remained with his sisters, as he was to leave them on Monday. Sunday was passed as usual. They read the service at old Armitage's grave, and afterward they walked in the forest, for Sunday was the only day on which Alice could find time to leave her duties in the cottage. They were not more grave than usual at the idea of Edward's leaving them, but they kept up their spirits, as they were aware that it was for the advantage of all. On Monday morning, Edward, to please his sisters, put on his new clothes, and put his forester's dress in the bundle with his linen. Alice and Edith thought he looked very well in them, and said that it reminded them of the days of Arnwood. The fact was that Edward appeared as he was, a gentleman born. That could not well be concealed under a forester's dress, and in his present attire it was undeniable. After breakfast Billy was harnessed and brought to the cottage door. Edward's linen was put in the cart, and as he had agreed with Humphrey, he took only Smoker with him, leaving the puppy at the cottage. Pablo went with them to bring back the cart. Edward kissed his sisters, who wept at the idea of his leaving them, and shaking hands with Humphrey, he set off to cross the forest. Who would have ever believed this, thought Edward, as he drove across the forest, that I should put myself under the roof and under the protection of a Roundhead, one in outward appearance, and in the opinion of the world at least, if he is not so altogether in opinions. There is surely some spell upon me, and I almost feel as if I were a traitor to my principles. Why I know not, I feel regard for that man, and have confidence in him. And why should I not? He knows my principles, my feelings against his party, and he respects them. Surely he cannot wish to gain me over to his party. That were indeed ridiculous, a young forester, a youth unknown. No, he would gain nothing by that, for I am nobody. It must be from good will, and no other feeling. I have obliged him in the service I rendered his daughter, and he is grateful. Perhaps, had Edward put the question to himself, should I have been on such friendly terms with the intendant, should I have accepted his offer, if there had been no Patience Heatherstone? He might then have discovered what was the spell upon him which had rendered him so tractable. But of that he had no idea. He only felt that his situation would be rendered more comfortable by the society of an amiable and handsome girl, and he inquired no further. His reverie was broken by Pablo, who appeared tired of holding his tongue, and said, "Massa Edward, you not like leave home. You think very much. Why you go there?" "I certainly do not like to leave home, Pablo, for I am very fond of my brother and sisters. But we cannot always do as we wish in this world, and it is for their sakes, more than from my own inclinations, that I have done so. Can't see what good you do Missy Alice and Missy Edith, 'cause you go away. How it possible do good, and not with them? Suppose bad accident, and you away, how you do good? Suppose bad accident, and you at cottage, then you do good. I think, Massa Edward, you very foolish." Edward laughed at this blunt observation of Pablo's, and replied, "It is very true, Pablo, that I cannot watch over my sisters and protect them in person, when I am away. But there are reasons why I should go, nevertheless, and I may be more useful to them by going than by remaining with them. If I did not think so, I would not leave them. They know nobody, and have no friends in the world. Suppose anything was to happen to me, suppose both Humphrey and I were to die, for you know that we never know how soon that event may take place. Who would there be to protect my poor sisters, and what would become of them? Is it not, therefore, wise that I should procure friends for them in case of accident, who would look after them and protect them? And it is my hope that by leaving them now I shall make powerful and kind friends for them. Do you understand me?" "Yes, I see now. You think more than me, Massa Edward. I say just now you foolish. I say now Pablo great fool. Besides, Pablo, recollect that I never would have left them as long as there was only Humphrey and I to look after them, because an accident might have happened to one of us. But when you came to live with us, and I found what a good, clever boy you were, and that you were fond of us all, I then said, 'Now I can leave my sisters, for Pablo shall take my place, and assist Humphrey to do what is required, and to take care of them.' Am I not right, Pablo?" "Yes, Massa Edward," replied Pablo, taking hold of Edward's wrist. "You quite right. Pablo does love Missy Alice, Missy Edith, Massa Humphrey, and you, Massa Edward. He love you all very much indeed. He love you so much that he die for you. Can do no more. That is what I really thought of you, Pablo, and yet I am glad to hear it from your own mouth. If you had not come to live with us, and not proved so faithful, I could not have left to benefit my sisters. But you have induced me to leave, and they have to thank you if I am able to be of any service to them." "Well, Massa Edward, you go. Never mind us, we make plenty of work. Do everything all the same as you. I think you will, Pablo, and that is the reason why I have agreed to go away. But, Pablo, Billy is growing old, and you will want some more ponies." "Yes, Massa Edward. Massa Humphrey talked to me about ponies last night, and say plenty in the forest. Ask me if I think us able catch them. I say yes, catch 1, 2, 20, suppose want them." "Ah, how will you to that, Pablo?" "Massa Edward, you tell Massa Humphrey no possible, so I no tell you how," replied Pablo, laughing. "Some day you come and see us, see 5 ponies in the stable. Massa Humphrey and I we talk about, find out how. You see." "Well, then, I shall ask no more questions, Pablo, and when I see the ponies in the stable, then I'll believe it, and not before. Suppose you want big horse for ride, catch big horse, Massa Edward, you see. Massa Humphrey very clever, he catch cow." "Catch gypsies," said Edward. "Yes," said Pablo, laughing, "catch cow, catch gypsy, and by catch horse." When Edward arrived at the intendant's house, he was very kindly received by the intendant and the 2 girls. Having deposited his wardrobe in his bedroom, he went out to Oswald and put Smoker in the kennel, and on his return found Pablo sitting on the carpet in the sitting room, talking to Patience and Clara, and they all 3 appeared much amused. When Pablo and Billy had both had something to eat, the cart was filled with pots of flowers, and several other little things, as presents from Patience Heatherstone, and Pablo set off on his return. "Well, Edward, you do look like a—" said Clara, stopping. "Like a secretary, I hope," added Edward. "Well, you don't look like a forester, does he, Patience?" continued Clara. "You must not judge of people by their clothes, Clara." "Nor do I," replied Clara. "Those clothes would not look well upon Oswald or the other men, for they would not suit them. But they do suit you, don't they, Patience?" Patience Heatherstone, however, did not make any answer to this second appeal made by Clara. "Why don't you answer me, Patience?" said Clara. "My dear Clara, it's not the custom for young maidens to make remarks upon people's attire. Little girls like you may do so." "Why, did you not tell Pablo that he looked well in his new clothes?" "Yes, but Pablo is not Mr. Armitage, Clara. That is very different." "Well, it may be, but still you might answer a question, if put to you, Patience. And I ask again, does not Edward look much better in the dress he has on than in the one that he has generally worn?" "I think it a becoming dress, Clara, since you will have an answer." "Fine feathers make fine birds, Clara," said Edward, laughing, "and so that is all we can say about it." Edward then changed the conversation. Soon afterward dinner was announced, and Clara again observed to Edward, "Why do you always call Patience Mistress Heatherstone? Ought he not to call her Patience, sir?" said Clara, appealing to the intendant. "That must depend upon his own feelings, my dear Clara," replied Mr. Heatherstone. "It is my intention to waive ceremony as much as possible. Edward Armitage has come to live with us as one of the family, and he will find himself treated by me as one of us. I shall, therefore, in future address him as Edward, and he has my full permission, and I may say it is my wish, that he should be on the same familiar terms with us all. When Edward feels inclined to address my daughter as he does you, by her name of baptism, he will, I dare say, now that he has heard my opinion, do so, and reserve Mistress Heatherstone for the time when they have a quarrel." "Then I hope he will never again address me that way," observed Patience, "for I am under too great obligations to him to bear even the idea of being on bad terms with him." "Do you hear that, Edward?" said Clara. "Yes, I do, Clara, and after such a remark you may be sure that I shall never address her in that way again." In a few days Edward became quite at home.